Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone around the world. I am Paul Sisler, and this is In the Moment. Today on the Vellum, we have TPAW, and we have a special guest appearance by Cornelia Blackmore. Today, we are going to talk about gender norms in writing. And with us, we have TPAW. Hello.
Hello.
All
We had a
right.
little bit of a break during the initial beginning of the holidays, but we are here.
Yes, we are. We are. Now, before we get into it, I'm going to go over a list of definitions for people so people can understand what we're talking about. For those that may not already have an understanding, it's going to be an education for those that don't. What we have here is when we talk about gender norms, a lot of people confuse gender and sex. All right. Sex is a person's biological status. Sex is typically assigned at birth based on external anatomy. Sex generally refers to the categories of male, female, and intersex. And for those that don't know what intersex is, that means you're both born with both genitalia. You're born with male and female organs. Gender. Gender is not the same as sex. Gender is often referred to as a social construct related to the norms, behaviors, and constantly evolving roles of people categorized as male, female, or non binary. Okay. So gender is a role. I want you to remember that. Gender is a role. It's not the anatomy of a person, it is the role of a person. Gender identity, which is different from gender. Each of us has internal self identity related to gender, whether we identify mostly as men, women, neither, or both. Our gender identities are not outwardly visible unless our gender expressions. While most people have a gender identity that aligns with the sex assigned to them at birth, according to the American Psychological Association, transgender people have gender identities that vary from their assigned birth sex. Gender expression, how someone presents their gender externally through their behaviors, clothing choices, vocal qualities, and other characteristics. While society might consider these expressions to be masculine or feminine, cultural ideas about gender constructs change over time and vary by culture, even within the same geographical area. Cisgender, also called cis. Cisgender describes someone whose gender identity aligns with their birth assigned sex. In other words, you are either cis or you are trans. Okay. Because trans or transgender describes someone whose gender identity differs from their birth assigned sex. For example, transgender women were considered male at birth, but actually identify as female. So, if you're born with male anatomy and you identify as a male, you are cisgender. If you were born with male anatomy and identify as a woman, then you are transgender. If you were a woman born with, if you were born with a woman's anatomy and identify as a woman, you are a cis woman. If you were born with female anatomy and you identify as a man, you are transgender. Okay. Non binary, a term used by people who describe themselves outside the binary genders, male and female. Genderqueer is a similar term. Agender describes someone who does not identify as any gender. Gender expansive describes someone who holds a flexible gender identity. One day I might feel like a woman, the next day I may feel like a man. Gender transition, the process by which a person takes steps to bring themselves and or their bodies into alignment with their gender identity. Then you have gender dysphoria, the medically and scientifically recognized psychological issues that arise when there is a disconnect between birth assigned sex and gender identity. All right. And then sexual orientation, the physical, romantic, and or emotional attraction to members of the same and or other genders. I myself identify as pansexual, which means I am attracted to male, female, and trans people. Gender doesn't matter to me. Okay. Um, and again, this isn't about being political or anything. These are the definitions for the topic of today's show, gender norms in writing. So that way, if we use some terminology that you don't understand, feel free to ask us in the comments or something like that, and we will respond to you.
Thank you, Professor Sisler.
And of course, when I see Cornelia come back, right now her video, her picture's not up, but if I see her picture come back up, I'll bring her back up. Oh, there she is. Okay.
Hi.
Hello, Cornelia.
Woo!
Right. Hi, guys. What it do, homie?
Hello. Hey, just weaving through the madness. I decided out of nowhere because I was talking to my Sweden friend, and we were talking about general normality, and I was getting all fascinated about the topic when it comes to how it relates to storytelling. And I was like, why don't we talk about that on the Vellum? Not to be even political about it, but to be, writing about it. Because writing storytelling is about the journey. It's about hero, villain, doesn't matter, anti-hero, doesn't matter. And a lot of times people will have preconceived notions of what it all means. And like, for instance, my one buddy, we had a debate for like almost an hour yesterday while he was at work, and he was talking about how he feels that because members of the community of LGBT or whoever associates or identifies as such, apparently there's a couple of members who were antagonistic towards him and used cisgender as a derogatory term, and he compared it to racial slang, and I'm like, but it's not the same. And he was saying that to him it sounded the same, and I'm like, so I went on to Google and I looked up cisgender and I looked up a couple different things so I could read it off to him and read off, to give myself perspective, but also give him perspective. And I was like, we could talk about this tomorrow on the podcast. And I was like,
right. You're like, this is a damn good topic, right?
Yeah, because I was like going, because we have quite a few members in our community who identify with this. And like Luke, I was hoping Luke would be on here. Didn't know how busy you were, so I was like, should I hit up Cornelia or should I not hit up Cornelia? And then Cornelia shows up here and was like, hey, bitches, I'm here. And so here we are.
Pretty much. That's what I do. I'm like, what's good, bitches? I'm here. Truthfully, when we're talking about, gender norms in writing, I'll be completely honest with you. This is just the way that I write it. I write it as if all of this struggle doesn't exist, because that's just my perspective. I already see it as normal. I don't see it as anything that's like not normal. And by no means am I dismissing, all of the trauma that comes with, being who you are, basically. I don't deny that or take away from it, but the point is to write it as if this is normal, because when we write it as if it's normal and we're not writing from the subconscious mentality of we've been traumatized, then yes, it is normal at that point. Does that make sense? Like, that's just how I write it. Yeah. I don't write from the oppressed mentality. I can't do that, because then if I did, then it's a disservice to all, to everyone that's in our respective communities that have gone through those things,
Yeah, no, it does. It makes a lot of sense. We've talked about that off camera and off stream and everything like that. And that's kind of how I view it too, is like, if you're going to take away oppression, if you're going to kill off oppression, then don't, have the mentality that there is oppression somewhere. Because, in order to have true free rights of the individual, not only do you educate those that aren't educated, but also you give true liberation to those that feel oppressed. You make them be like, hey, you are free to be yourself.
That's right.
You are free. You are safe. You are comfortable. You should be. And help them heal from whatever pain that they're feeling, where they feel the opposite. And when I'm writing Trinity, for instance, when I was writing her as a character, I found a couple different areas in the story where I could have gone with either which direction on whether or not she's hetero with her love life, or whether she's pan or whatever. And I was like, and I found myself writing her as an individual and not as a female. Like, there was female like qualities to like how she feels as a woman, and that introduced itself in the narrative, and the fact that there are males around her that are trying to dictate, but then there were also females doing the same thing. And then suddenly I was like, but then isn't gender in this story kind of like unassigned? Like, because a couple of the demon characters in the story don't even have a gender. They're just demons. and they are technically also shapeshifters in some ways, so they could change at will. And so suddenly, gender normality is no longer considered there's no normal thing, and so you could easily change it which way you want based on what your desire is or what you feel. And suddenly, like the idea, because remember, you and I are similar in age, and so we both know what the '90s was like, and we both know what the new millennia was like, and we both know what that normal was. And now we're in a different age where a different version now exists. And so it's interesting. This topic is fascinating to me because it also relates to the human experience and human condition and like how we write.
I agree. And for me, the only reason that I haven't written specific gender character types, one is because of consistent misrepresentation. That is something, at least when it comes to those things, I would rather have done my checks and balances, like have a sensitivity reader, had that conversation with different individuals within those respective communities. Now, the only community that I probably won't speak to is within the Black community, but that's just my stuff. That's a completely separate topic. But it's a completely separate topic. But I would want to write, said character types and do it honor and do it justice. Where again, I'm not writing it from my prior conditions, biases, and old fart brain, if I'm being honest. Like, that's not fair.
Yep. That's kind of how I've been seeing it, because like I just turned 31 recently, and I was suddenly realizing that I'm writing from a different frame of mind than say a teenager. So I found it hard actually recently to write from the teen's perspective. So I was not writing Trinity from the perspective of a teenager. She had teenage tendencies. She tended to act like a teenager, but at the same time, like I was writing from a human's perspective, even though she was a vampire. And it was a very interesting perspective to write under, because we're no longer thinking of gender in terms of male or female. It's just simply gender, and it's all identity. And so when Paul was like, I'm going to read off this list during the podcast, I'm like, okay, have at it. Maybe someone will learn something from it. Maybe y'all all learn something from it. And one of the things I took away from it was that people themselves, my wife is non-binary, and the only reason why she identifies with she her is because everyone sees her as she her, because the way her body looks. Otherwise she would just be simply they them non-binary. I uncovered that recently when I was at a smoke shop with her, and I was like we were in the parking lot in the car, and I was like talking about gender identity and things like that. And now, to me, things have changed a bit since I had my dear death experience, because I was medically dead for like 5 minutes, and she had to resuscitate me. And I got into like this weird thing where someone who hasn't been there doesn't understand, but where like you're not seeing light in the same way because your eyes aren't seeing light, because like the only light that was in that room was from like the fish tank and like a few different places where it could refract into your light to your eyelids. And so all I was seeing was just this rainbow kaleidoscope and complete darkness. And then eventually I ended up seeing this gray sheen that looked like it was, a storm cloudy sky, but yet it wasn't. And then all of a sudden out of nowhere, after I got pulled away from that because she resuscitated me. But after that, I was like trying to define what reality meant. And I was like, wait, so what is gender? And what is all these things, this identity, these things that people argue about consistently? And suddenly I was like, wait a minute, what if it's just the human experience? Like, what if it's just based on, our emotions and who we are as people and identity? Because gender, for the longest time, for decades, as we know, has been dictated by not only government regulation, but also based on what we think science means. And so when you strip away those two things that classify it, suddenly gender opens up into this wide spectrum. It opens up into a rainbow. And I kind of wanted to talk about it on the podcast, because I was like, wait a minute, I'm going to be writing characters that are not strictly male or female. Like you're going to be reading the story, and at one point you're going to see the character be like, they did this or they did that. And the person that doesn't know about this will be like, what does that even mean? And it's like, that means they don't have a set gender. That means it's flexing.
Right.
Gender is a social construct. Okay, it's strictly a social construct. It's how we identify people when we want to label as male or female. Little boys play with army toys. Little girls play with little dollies. Now, if you're a girl, you don't play with the army toys and the dump trucks and the Tonka toys. That's what boys play with. But now, when you start looking, let's go a little bit deeper. Little boys don't cry, little girls cry. If you cry, you're a sissy if you're a boy. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I was born with tear ducts that allow me to cry. So, as a male, I have the ability to cry. So, why am I not allowed to cry? Because that wouldn't be masculine. Only feminine people cry. And if you're a boy and you cry, you must be feminine. You see, we constructed this ideology of these gender roles that we're supposed to take on. Women are supposed to do the dishes. Men are to take out the trash.
Okay. Which I do all the above.
Women are supposed to do the laundry. Women are supposed to do all these household things. Men, we're supposed to go out and do the yard work. We're supposed to garden. Well, wait, what if a woman decides to garden? Does that make her a man? No, she likes to garden. You see, people want to make these constructs to identify people. And if you go outside of that, then you're not normal, which is idiotic. Go ahead, Cornelia.
Thank you. What I could go on about toxic masculinity because no, seriously, like I could go on serious tangent. No, because listen, my problem with it is that it mind-boggling to me that men just aren't allowed to cry. And I'm like, okay, listen, you expect this person to lead when they are not emotionally fucking stable. Make it make sense. That don't make no sense to me. And it's the other reason, like, I've had men confide in me and they have told me the worst possible things that have happened in their lives. And I'm like, and you never cried about this shit? And they're like, nah. When did this happen? When I was a child. And you ain't cried about it? No, I can't. What the fuck does that even mean? Like, you have feelings, you have emotions, you're a human fucking being. Like, you are a divine being that is both masculine and feminine energy. And guess what? Men, I feel, again, just the men that I've come across, need to learn and understand the importance of falling in feminine energy. And what I mean when I use the term feminine energy, I quite frankly mean learning to take a step back. Don't always have to be in do mode, right? Like do, go, make shit happen, because that's masculine energy. Whereas feminine energy is learning to sit with self, learning to transmute those emotions, so in that way men can be their best authentic selves. And the fact that we're still following this bullshit construct that it's like, I'm not allowed to be a human being, get the fuck out of my face. Like, I hate that.
Well, exactly. Well, it's designated due to superiority. Okay. Men are self-designated as superior.
Right.
All right.
You're right.
And with that, we've set what the norms are. And if you don't follow the norms, you're inferior. In other words, masculine is superior to feminine. That's the construct. That's what's supposed to be the norm.
Created that construct, not us.
Correct. Correct. No, you're absolutely right. So when it comes to writing, then, people get upset if you create a strong feminine leader, because that's not how women are supposed to be. They're not supposed to be strong. Why not? I tell you right now, in my lifetime, I've met a lot of very inferior men and some very superior women. Okay. And
my father-in-law can't walk throughout the house without having a Pomeranian bark at him, and he gets extremely insecure and inferior about it and just screams about it. I'm just like, how toxically masculine can you get? Well, he's one.
Well, I'm going a different route with this. I'm kind of going a different route with this. I'm talking about people that are basically able to take control of a situation and people that aren't able to take control of the situation, because it's presented that men are leaders and women are followers.
No.
Okay. And the reality is, when you really look at a woman and the role that she plays in life, if you really take a look, you'll see who the true leaders are if you want to get down to it. The reality is men are actually the inferior to women. And the reason why I say that is a man, yeah, he can go out and he'll work that job. He'll bring home the bread and he'll, sit down with his beer and watch TV. All right. He'll mow the lawn on Saturday. All right. The woman raising the kids, cooking the dinners, working a job, budgeting the checkbook, getting the groceries, making the meals. Um, wait, what? What? Let's switch the roles every once in a while. Because I tell you right now, I can tell you that most men could not handle the role of a woman. They simply could not handle it. Go ahead, Cornelia.
Thank you. I will give one statistic that proves and backs up your point. If a man was to ever give birth to a child, their heart would fucking stop. Point blank, period. A man's heart would stop.
Have you seen on have you seen on TikTok where men are putting on these machines to demonstrate what a woman goes through during menstruation?
Oh my
Okay.
God, no.
All right. Oh my God. You got to check them out because they go up to like 1 to 10. And most men can't make it to like 6 or 7. They no, stop. I can't deal with it. And the woman can walk around with this thing on 10, like, what the fuck? You're a man. You can't deal with this? Oh, I tell you. I tell you, the real normalcy of what is versus the social construct of what is supposed to be in the eyes of men are two complete different things. And when we write, just like I'm doing in my book, Blood Schism, I am flipping some shit on that. And people are going to have to wake up. TJ, I'm flipping some shit. All right. I am flipping some shit. You're going to look at a little boy, and everyone's going to assume that this little boy is growing up to become a man, when the reality is, wait till you see what TJ.
What's up, Cornelia?
Okay. Most of the characters that I write, even with most of the men, I do write predominantly bisexual because that is what I identify as. And again, I normally don't share that, mainly just for a couple of reasons. And you guys already know, because one, there's a lot of stigma to it. Two, I'm old fashioned in that regard. I can admit this, because the way I've been told is just, well, if you identify with it, you just open a whole new can of worms. And they're absolutely right. It is a whole new can of worms and a bunch of bullshit that I damn sure don't want to deal with. 2, 3, really, it's no one else's business. If I'm just speaking my part, my aspect on that, it wasn't until I was at work one day and there was this girl that I just found absolutely fucking gorgeous, had a huge crush on her. And when I started talking to my coworkers about it, then that's when the questions started. Because again, they had assumed that because I didn't open up my mouth about it, I didn't talk about it, that they were like, oh, I didn't even know that you like women like that. I was like, yeah. They were just like,
it would have been obvious.
I had no idea. And I was like, well, yeah, because I didn't feel that it was your business to know, but now I feel comfortable talking about it. I don't have those things. I'm blessed to say that, I don't have any of the other stuff that has happened with other people that have had different experiences, very traumatic experiences with coming out and saying, hey, that this is who I am. So for me, it just had more to do with my preconditions and all of that. So most of the characters that I write really masculine men that are in their masculine role, but can also embrace their feminine energy and be a partner to their man, if that makes sense. So yes. I write it. The point that I do and why I write different types of relationships is because I want to show that relationships, regardless of the dynamic, can be healthy. Because there's so many stories out here where it's just perpetuating this consistent toxic idea of what, you know, a queer relationship is supposed to look like, or what, you know, a bisexual relationship is supposed to look like, or what a poly relationship is supposed to look like. And it can still be healthy. And that's the reason why I write it the way that I do. So
Yes.
yeah, like I write the shit.
Yes.
Yeah. I do want to share that on my astrology app that I have. I don't remember what it's called exactly, but I gave it my approximate birth time, birth year, everything like that. And deadass, it told me polarity wise that I am 50-50 feminine masculine. In fact, some days, with the way you described it, Cornelia, I'm more feminine than I am masculine in some ways. Because yeah, while I go to the gym and I lift weights, and that can be considered a masculine thing, even though there's females there that lift way more weight than any of us guys do. Like there was a chick there that could easily have been Wonder Woman. I was like staring, and she's like, you wanna take a picture, sexy? And I just look at her and goes, I was like, sure I will. And she's like, I wasn't being serious. I'm like, you called me out and you expected me to not follow up. I'm going to take a picture of an Amazonian princess. She's like, I ain't a princess. I'm like, okay, you're a fucking queen. She's like, good. I'm like, don't throw me. But I was, you know, in that moment, I was like, I went from being really masculine and being like, yeah, let's lift weights, to being like, hello. And so like, you know, so like, you know, I'm between both. Like, you know, with the way you described it with, you know, the kitchen cleaning and all the other stuff and all that stuff being, you know, very feminine and you know, being in touch with your emotions and being able to sit back and think and, you know, pull back, having more power in pulling back than it is in charging forward and being like, "Rah!" Like I actually, what's funny is my father-in-law, he's actually very masculine, but he's also very toxic about it. But for some reason, I was able to like pull him back because of the fact that my feminine side kicked in. And I put my foot down and was like, no, we're not doing this. We're not doing this pointless conflict. And I even called it pointless to him. And he looked terrified, like, because of the fact that I wasn't feeding his anger, his rage. And I was like, calling on, I was like, we're going to stop this. Like, we're not going to go there. We're not going to go where you want to go. And I already know you're terrified. And he was like, even more terrified that I called him out on it. So it was a very interesting thing. So I just wanted to share that for you.
Yeah. No, that's why I said. And I'm sorry, Paul, were you gonna go? Wait,
no, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Shit, now I forgot what I was gonna say. Fucking ADHD. Go ahead, Paul.
I, along with many other people and all that, we've had issues in identifying what masculinity and feminism actually is. Masculine and feminine. What are the differences? Why are there differences? And back in the early 90s, I was in a sexual experiment, and there is estrogen-driven aspects to people and testosterone-driven aspects to people. And what a lot of people don't realize is that it doesn't matter which genitalia you're born with. You have testosterone and you have estrogen. You have both. All right. I am attracted to estrogen-driven human beings. Okay. Estrogen-driven human beings. You could have male anatomy and be estrogen-driven. I might find you attractive. If you are a woman and you're estrogen-driven, I'm probably going to find you attractive because we release pheromones for what we're attracted to. And then the hypothalamus plays a part in this based upon the size and the pheromones that you release. It's all chemicals. Okay? It's all chemicals. Once you realize you are who you are, you can do what you do, and it doesn't matter what you identify as or how you dress or how you appear or how you try to talk or any of that. You simply are what you are. Okay? You are what you are. You're either going to be more masculine or more feminine based upon the hormones that come from your body. And from that, that's who we learn to be if society doesn't oppress us and disallow us from being who we want to be. And part of the problem that we have today is that society tries to say, you have to act like this, or you have to act like that. You have to date someone like this or date someone like that. You don't get to pick and choose because you were born this way. So you have to perform this way. And that's oppression.
Mm-hmm.
We should be able to act upon what our body says we are. And if we are born with one thing and we think we're another because that is how we feel, then that's what we are.
Mm-hmm.
Period.
I agree. I fall predominantly into masculine energy. And I also understand that because I do fall like predominantly into masculine energy, granted, it's for a bunch of different reasons, but that is where I feel the most comfortable and confident. Whereas falling into, not falling, but relaxing into feminine energy is the better term here, is very challenging for me. Because again, a lot of that has to do, like I, earlier, having to sit back and do all of those things. And I realize now that that's the other reason why I write my male characters the way I do. And I can admit there is more of a disconnect when I'm writing female characters, not because, of all the other stuff, but just for me, I'm like the shit with women is obvious. Like that's just how I see it. If I'm being completely honest with y'all, but I do. I fall predominantly more into masculine energy, and you guys have read my work, so like most of my male characters have like kick-ass entrances.
Conversations with you, and I know your masculine side and I know your feminine side. I've seen both, and the majority of the time I see you more in a masculine, I'm not going to say role, but more of a masculine mindset, a
mentality.
Right.
Yeah.
And that also comes with, I've found a lot of women, especially women that are either a minority or in a sexual minority, take on more of this masculine energy because they have to defend themselves more. They're more on the defense, where normal masculine energy is as a protector.
Yep.
Okay. And that's a physical protector versus the female protector is to pull in and, hold back and defend when I have to, where masculine is here I come, so women have been doing a lot of this for decades, and now they're like, we're tired. Let's go.
Right.
Yeah. I think I've heard Cornelia say I'm tired quite a few times actually in the past.
Yes. I'm fucking exhausted. I am. All right, listen, because there's nothing worse than having the knowledge that I have and then to be mansplained as a woman, and then I just have to stand here and be like, I'm just going to appease your shallow ego, sir. You go right ahead and you hold that. Because I know what I know, and I'm going to just sit on it and be like, yeah, I know what I know. But because you're a man, you feel that you need to express that because that comes from a very insecure place and a need for acknowledgement. I ain't there no more, sir.
Now, I tell you, I read your book, Truth and Dare. Okay. And
gets me all giggly every time.
I can't remember the characters' names, but
it's fine.
The one that I said was you. I can feel Yumi. I can feel the masculinity in that character. Okay.
Yep.
Then the one that tried to get back with her, Caleb. I could see the arrogant masculinity. Then the one that she was in love with the whole time and didn't know,
Aries.
Favorite character. I could feel both sides because there was the redirecting and the bringing things out, the manipulation aspect of it. And then there was I'm just going to take you out in the woods and beat your ass, motherfucker. aspect of it.
Yep.
And that was my favorite character.
I loved
Okay.
him. He was my favorite too.
Okay. And then you got, what's her name? Phoebe?
Phoebe, I loved her.
Yes. Where she has this masculinity that she refuses to show until the end.
Yep.
Trying to be the E10. So I loved the illustration throughout that whole book, and I recognized it. And now most people, I hate to say it, people that don't have an inner dialogue are going to miss all of that.
Right back to
Because
this. God damn it, Paul. I actually shared that statistic with somebody while I was at work. And I was like, this is the reason why there is a huge lack of self-awareness with a lot of people. There's nothing more aggravating than having to deal with someone that doesn't have a level of self-awareness, because it's like, bro, if I'm trying to check you and you don't like it, I do the shit for myself. I'm like a goddamn computer at this point. I am constantly self-regulating. And then to be around someone that doesn't do that, feels the need to man-explain, and then I'm already picking up that your ego is shallow, and I can't say shit because I'm a woman. Yeah, whatever. But I just wanted to touch point on what you had said earlier about certain roles when it comes to, you know, the woman being the one to do the dishes and the man takes out the trash. Fuck that shit, okay? That is a life skill. That is a survival skill. If you don't know how to fucking cook, you're not finna eat. If you don't know how to take the trash out, you can get sick. Like, there's so much shit that can go with it that I'm just like, the fact that this is even still a thing is, again, mind-boggling to me, because that was the way my parents explained it to me. They were like, there are no roles to that. It's a life skill, and it's a life skill that you should know how to do, regardless of the bullshit roles that have been assigned to whoever at this point.
I can remember,
Exactly.
I think I was about 5, maybe 6 years old. And my dad was ironing. Okay. And I had come out and I go, Dad, you're ironing like mom does. You're a woman today. And my dad, and he explained to me, you're going to learn how to iron. You're going to learn how to cook. You're going to learn how to clean. You're going to know how to do all of these things. I was in the military, son, and I had to do all of these things by myself. And I am a man.
I had a very similar lesson from my own father. He was a Navy man. And he like did that thing. He's like, when I was your age, he like jumped into the hole. When I was your age, I didn't have anybody. I didn't have any help from any of my parents. I didn't have help from this or that. You know, he had list, and it was like, you know, the cleaning, cooking, everything.
And I tell you, my dad, not only did he make me do all of those things, he made my sister mow the lawn. He made my sister take the garbage out. There was no roles according to gender. There was chores that needed to be done.
Yep.
And you had to know how to do them. I do my right now. I do my own laundry. I do dishes. I got a toilet that I got to drastically clean. I haven't cleaned it for 3 days, but usually every day I clean my toilet. Okay. Oh my God, you clean your toilet? How do you even do that? You would not be surprised at how many men do not know how to clean a fucking toilet.
Honestly, I live in Utah, so I probably wouldn't be surprised.
Okay? You'd be surprised at how many men don't know how to do half the things around a house to maintain a house, because they expect the gender role of the woman to do that.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
And I would do all of the above the previous night, and Amber would wake up with the kids in the morning to take them to school, right? And everything would be spotless. Like, she'd go to the pee, and the toilet would be cleaned. She'd go to the living room, everything would be spotless. The only thing I couldn't do was vacuum late at night because it was after town curfew. But in the morning, I was vacuuming, and then later on, the kids would be like, is Daddy using the vacuum? And then Mom would be like, yes, Daddy's using the vacuum. And then like she'd be like, babe, why aren't you going to bed? I'm like, because I missed doing this morning. And she's like, you know, you need to sleep, right? I'm like, what's sleep? When things need to get done.
Right. And see, I don't look at that as being effeminate or masculine. Okay. I just simply look at it as a necessity of life. You know,
Yep.
I don't assign any of these things as gender. And I think that's why I don't see it in the ways that a lot of other people see it. And this is why I think that I'm more accepting of people, no matter who they are or what they do. I don't see things as this is a role for a man or a woman. This is just a role for a human being to get shit done.
Mm-hmm. Which kind of what
For
brings
real.
me to the normality of the fact that people should be able to identify however which way that they feel comfortable with, and then be able to tell their truth and what their story is. Curious if you allow guests to join and listen and converse with you all. I don't know, Paul. What do you think about that?
Well, yeah, I can do that. I don't know who Cavalier is. Cavalier 12. Anybody know who this is?
Mm-mm.
Not
But
ringing into my head.
something.
What's up, Cornelia?
Well, I was gonna say another experience I would like to share when it comes to the bullshit gender roles, and this is something that happened to me when I was like in 5th or 6th grade. I don't know, like, to anyone that's a part of the anime community, y'all will know exactly what I'm talking about as soon as I open up this can of worms too. When I was in about maybe 4th or 5th grade, I actually watched Dragon Ball Z and Sailor Moon. Now, Dragon Ball Z, for those of you that know, like Dragon Ball Z, the whole series is predominantly masculine. There you go. It's predominantly masculine because, again, it's all fights, it's conflicts, it's all that shit, right? Sailor Moon, same thing, but again, it has that female stigma because of the whole transformation process of, okay, I'm going to wear a short fucking miniskirt and I'm going to beat your ass. Cool, I'm with it. Now, because I liked both, no, real shit, I liked both. So whenever I would go to school and we would talk about it the next day, the girls would be like, ew, you watch Dragon Ball Z? And then the dudes would say, ew, you watch Sailor Moon? Like, just based off of that. Like, that one experience where a group of kids was telling me, like, you're not allowed to watch either of those shows. You have to pick one. Wow, who said? Excuse you.
Right?
No, I like both. I do. I like both. And I don't think, I mean, the fact that children even had a specific gender role that was preconditioned by whoever the hell told these children that, hey, you can't do this because it falls in masculine role, or hey, you can't do this or watch this because this is predominantly feminine. That's bullshit. That is such bullshit. Like what you like and be great. Like, such bullshit.
It's funny is my brother-in-law Tim and my wife, Jude. They both on either side. Tim loved Dragon Ball Z. She loved Sailor Moon, but yet they both would watch each other's shows all the time. And apparently in Oklahoma, that is a big thing, that their gender role stuff that you're talking about. Me personally, I grew up in Cali, so therefore I didn't know that there was a gender role thing until later on in middle school, when some of the kids at the school would be like, "Oh, you watch that? That's a girl show. Or you watch that? That's a boy show." And me personally, I was like, "It's just a cartoon. Like, we should be able to watch all of it." But my wife was just like, "Yeah, in Oklahoma, they'd always say, 'Oh, you're watching a boy show or a girl show.'" And so both my wife and their sibling were like, "Fuck that. We're both gonna watch each other's shows, and y'all can all deal with it."
Cavalier says, I believe in two genders, but would respectfully discuss and change my mind if convinced. And says, I just want my ideas challenged and open to thinking differently. Just to let you know, hold on a second here. Okay. First of all, Cavalier, let me put in the definitions here. Sex, person's biological status. Sex is typically assigned at birth based on external anatomy. Sex generally refers to the categories of male, female, and intersex. Intersex being a person who's born with both male and female anatomy. Gender is not the same as sex. Gender, often referred to as a social construct, is related to the norms, behaviors, and is constantly evolving roles of people categorized as male, female, and non binary. Then there's gender identity, which goes a little bit more. But bottom line is that I respect the idea that you'd like to come in here and um, add value to my show. The reality is that we've already had this discussion, and we already know that there's three sexes, there's multiple genders, and there's multiple gender identities.
And
And
we're really just trying to talk about how it relates to storytelling and not debate on what person's point of view is what. Cornelia, are you still there?
exactly.
She like put her hand up, and usually that means either she wants to talk or that she
Well,
has it.
she says she'll be right back. She had to drop off because she's running some errands, so she'll be back.
Oh, okay. But yeah, no, as far as this goes, when it comes to gender identity, it has more to do with the identity of the person and how they feel and how secure they feel in their own skin. That's really what it comes down to. And how it turns of storytelling is that in any story, any book you read, any show you watch, any story in general, the character is often assigned a gender because of the person's viewpoints or whatever goes on in their creative consciousness. I wanted to visit the idea of what if we lived in a world, or at least we lived in a um, idea in which gender normality was challenged, in which we kind of combined ideas on the whole idea of like gender is flexing. Gender flexes and changes based on the person's identity rather than based on preconceived social norms of what was before versus what is now, and then what will be in the future. Because storytelling is about the future. It's about setting the pave. It's about setting the setting in which stories carry the world forward. They carry the generation forward. Like Cornelia's writing stories about people who are darker skinned, because in her world everything's flipped, and so she has a very different viewpoint to other people. And when it comes to gender norms, you could, I guess, have a story where the guy or the person is a guy or a female. But if you had a story where gender really was kind of more of a suggestion rather than a concrete reality, because it's all based on the identity. Go ahead, Cornelia.
So Cavalier asked a question, and Paul, I don't know if you can see this question, but it says, should pedophiles be allowed to self-identify? Now,
whoa.
Here's my thing with this. Yes, we went there. So you know what? Let's go there. Okay. All right. Here's my thing with it. Now, I can admit, I don't know statistically if that's predominantly within that community, right? So I want to start out by saying that, or however, you guys know me well enough where I can equally see both perspectives. A lot of it being my own biases as well. Do I feel that pedophiles should be allowed to self-identify? First off, before a pedo becomes a pedo, they were a human being before they became that way, okay? So if I'm speaking on a human being basis, not necessarily on all the other stuff, then the answer should be yes. But again, there's a thing with that too. But I'm looking at it more as an individual and not necessarily like with what they do. Now with what they do, that shit's not okay. That's not okay. It'll never ever be okay. And please don't ever let me see it. Please don't ever let me see it. The people that I do not have any type of empathy or compassion for is pedophiles and rapists. Them, the two motherfuckers I feel nothing for. So I just wanted to answer it in the both aspects. And thank you for this question, sir. We appreciate it, sir, ma'am, whichever you identify as.
Yeah, we appreciate you. Yeah, as far as self-identify, like does that mean that they want to identify, like they want to tell the world that they're a pedo because that would be outing themselves, or is it because they want to identify or have someone recognize it in some way that's positive? Because that right there is a slippery slope, because that means that you're, agreeing morality wise with the idea that they can be that way. And, technically, pedophilia, as we know, is not morally correct. So I kind of question, kind of like, it's got, that is a giant can of worms.
It is. It is, but that's the other reason I prefer to address it in both aspects and not necessarily just one. Because if I did that, one, it's limiting myself and my capability to understand it from an outside perspective. But have I heard shit in the news and whatever else saying that, well, pedos predominantly are within that community? Yeah, I've heard it all the fucking time. And I'm not saying that this isn't a thing or that it doesn't exist. It does. But every community has their shit with it. The Black community has their shit with it. The LGBTQ community has their shit about it. The feminist community has their shit about it. So you can't just use and focus on one aspect of the community and say this is the shit for all of them. That's unfair, bro. That's really unfair.
Well, and statistically, when you look at the prison system and all that, the majority of those people that are in it are male white.
Interesting factoid.
Yeah, exactly. See, correct.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Truthfully, again, the fact that this is just even a thing, I mean, because we can all focus on the negative aspect of any community, right? Just like someone else could just as equally say, well, the Black community is discredited because you're killing each other. And it's true, you're right. But there's both shit happening at one time, my guy. You can't just say that it's not just one thing that's happening that completely discredits the other. No, both is happening. You know what I mean? So again, there's that woeful ignorance. And that's what I call it. It is woeful ignorance. That does not apply.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, yeah, and that's the thing is
hold on. Cavalier said, and I never said minorities are more likely to be pedophiles. Okay. Why are you bringing race into this? Well, the fact that we're talking about genders and you want to come in and try to say that there's only two genders, which you said in your comments that there's only two. And we're talking about gender identity and gender norms, which strongly relates to the LGBTQIA community. And people are having issues with that. Then when you come in and you start bringing in someone that is not part of that community, pedophiles, and start asking all these questions, you kind of lead to where you're going with it. And you're reading into my question and you're assuming, well, you make it that way. You make it that way by bringing the question up to begin with on this topic of gender identification. So again,
how is pedophilia a gender though? Like, isn't that describing you, whether or not you're a older individual who is attracted to a much younger individual? And don't we classify that as being morally incorrect? Like, I'm confused about this one. Go ahead, Cornelia.
Legally incorrect. Okay.
Yeah, morally
legally. And again, when people start coming in and talking about things in this aspect, it's because they're leading into a conversation that they want to control and dictate.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. So that's how I see it. And granted, Cavalier, you may not be doing that, but the majority of the time when people come in and do this, that's exactly what their intent is. So yes, I am assuming that you are doing this. So anyways, but
Cornelia, were you going to say something?
I wish to address this person. When you come in on a show with preconceived notions and biases and ask a question with preconceived notions and biases, and then you don't care for the answer that you're getting because you asked us. Okay, we all have varying different beliefs and opinions, and that's fine. But you done rode up in here asking a question, not even with the desire to understand. At no point was that ever expressed. So no, I'm not projecting. You wrote up in here and projected. Okay.
Bingo.
Yep. Yeah, part of the reason why I also tackled this whole topic in general was because I had a conversation with my Sweden buddy, and as I'll remind people, and it was because of the fact that for years, or at least for a while, I had trouble understanding it. I had trouble getting it because of my '90s kid programming, the preconceived notions, the social construct that you grow up in during, in my age, and Cornelia probably knows about that, and um, where you learn about two genders and you learn about that whole construct of what it's like to live in a world where there are only two genders, and then as an adult being told, oh well, now there's more than that, and now it's a rainbow, or now it's now it's flexed, now it's changed, and so I've had my own mentality, my own point of view challenged quite a bit, and how I see things has challenged, and it's been a giant learning experience for me, and so part of the journey is also mine, in the fact that I'm learning that I'm half and half. I'm half masculine, half feminine. I can flip either which way, and it helps me a lot as a parent. It helps me a lot as a human being, as a person, as a personality, and it also helps me when I write characters, because I can write the character very masculine, very gung ho, or I can write it very emotional, very emotionally charged, and very feminine, and very pull back and nursing, and being very nurturing, and teaching and mentoring and things like that. And I've done a lot of mentoring in the last year, more mentoring than I ever bargained for, and even got called a therapist quite a few times. So it's like, so it's like, I was very intrigued by this topic because I wanted to talk about how gender norms relates to our identity and to our society, and how everyone is getting, like, when I say everyone, that's a giant generalization loophole, but there's a lot of people out there that I have run into where they're either really triggered by this topic or they're really freed by it. And really, you can honestly control how you react to a situation, rather than letting a situation control you. And so part of this whole podcast is also to teach or to encourage information. And so, yeah, if you take anything away from it, I hope it's the fact that we're hoping that you go out and help heal the world or do good things for people, or that you learn something about yourself, and that you feel more secure in your own skin as a human being. Not encouraging the P word, like the person in the comments is trying to suggest. Not encouraging that, but I am encouraging liberation of oneself, liberation of control, liberation of being able to feel more in tune with yourself. And that's something that you, Cornelia, talk about all the time on your Twitter. You talk about divine self, divine voice, and your spiritual guides and things like that. And you do your readings, and you're now American Gandhi. And so, like, you have your own way of doing it. And so this is kind of my way. It's, podcasting. It's recording my own voice and showing that someone like me, who was previously called transphobe, even though I'm not, because of the fact that I didn't understand how it all worked, and I was working under '90s programming, and now it's like my mind is flipped. It's changed a little bit. It's grown. There's been a growth experience in the topic that we're discussing, which is why I was hoping Luke was going to be here too, so that Luke could talk about what it's like to be someone that is in that life, someone that is having the experience. Because my wife would easily, have a conversation with Luke about this, because my wife identifies as non-binary. And there was one time where I literally, how it happened was I was talking to her about how Trinity is in the story and how she is as a character. And I was like, well, does that make her bi? And then my wife's like, well, what if you just make her pan? Like, have Destin and her both be pan? Where they could be either one way. And I'm like, wait, does that mean there's less? And she's like, that means you're more flexible when it comes to, her spectrum. And I was like, her story is more about being in tune with herself and about self-care and self-love than it is about whether or not she's got a boyfriend or a girlfriend. Because, like, that was one of the scenes, it was a spin the bottle scene. And it was, the question was asked was, is she going to fall for the boy or is she going to fall for the girl? And then I was like, well, what if she falls for neither? What if it's just a game? And what if she's playing with the game and she's, flirting around with them, but it's more about herself, her story, and more about the individual rather than whether or not she has a boyfriend or a girlfriend. And suddenly, the story took on a whole different meaning.
Yeah.
And it made me think about gender normality.
Right. And I'm going to be delving a lot into that with my blood schism story and all that, because when you meet the leader of the Druids is going to be a woman. And Iris is, of course, now in this love triangle with Donovan and the leader of the Druids. So, it's going to be jumping around. And there's a lot of sexuality in this story. And I'm going to be addressing, straight, gay, queer, trans, intersex, all aspects and all avenues of it. And as I've stated before, all of my books have political undertones. Okay, everything.
No, never. You actually been waiting for me to sit down.
And I'm going to be addressing a lot of issues, and there's a lot of hate towards people that are different, whether it be religion, whether it be skin color, whether it be a place of country of origin, whether it be sexual preference, orientation. There's a lot of anger and hatred towards people that don't fit the status quo white mentality, and it needs to be addressed. Our country is in this division right now, the most divided it's ever been. Yep. And it's sad. I mean, I'm going to be 54 this month. Christmas, I turned 54. And in my 54 years on this planet, I have never seen such a problem with diversity as I see now today with it. And it's just, it's very, very infuriating and frustrating. And the fact that when we write, we are putting into our stories a lot about who we are and our feelings and what we think and want and need and stuff like that. And none of us and all the people in our community that I've heard read stuff are talking about strictly male white people. They're talking about people from all categories, all lands, all different things. And the diversity just in the writing is huge. So now that this country has become divided on this, and we have so many people that are, being oppressed, so much misinformation and disinformation that's being put out there on so many levels, on so many different things. And we're also politically divided, that I think the way that part of this changes is people like us writing and telling our stories on whether it's fiction or nonfiction, whether it's vampires and zombies and cannibalism, or it's a love story in a whole nother world of, whatever, the fact that we can put all this stuff out there and relate to people on different levels is what is needed. And people need to get out there and, get more diversity in their reading.
Gaston's in the comments, by the way.
Oh, hold on. I got to switch glasses.
Just real quickly, before we bring a close to the show, I just wanted to make a couple really cool announcements. So I have a photo shoot coming up on the 19th, and it's going to be a billionaire romance genre where it's going to be me and another, Black male model, because you guys already know that my mission is to change the narrative. I want plus size men and women on covers. I need people of color on covers for all genres. Like it needs to happen. So, and I was actually expressing this to like one of my coworkers recently, and I was like, this is what I plan to do. So I have a photo shoot planned. I can't wait for you guys to see the shot. It's going to be a lot of fun. You guys already know that The Saint's Blood is coming out on the 23rd, to which, Paul, I did take time off for our interview that day. So I think it was like the 21st. Yes,
yep.
It was on the 21st. Yep. So And I may have another photo shoot coming up eventually at some point where it's going to be erotica. So it's going to be like the whole BDSM erotica type of, type of genre with me. So it's going to be fun.
Oh, that sounds spicy.
I know,
I'm
right?
still waiting for your call for those questions that you had.
That's right. That's right. Right.
Yes. Yes, you definitely need to give me a call, and I can talk to you about those things. And of course, I'm not going to discuss what those things are. We're going to let Cornelia.
I do have a.
Is that even after
Go
show
ahead.
material?
What's that?
I said, is that after show material?
It could be. Yeah, we can do. Are you up for it? We can do an after show on that.
I mean, shit, I'm already here, bro.
All right. All right. We'll have an after show on it.
Yeah. So soon, sometime soon, not now, but sometime soon, I'm going to be making some announcements with my own stuff. Because Snake of the Dame, there's going to be another edition made for it, and then, as you know, I've already talked about Trinity Story. So Storms of Blood is going to get put back up. I just have to edit it and get it, situated. But I should be making an announcement on that sometime soon. So I figured I'd update you on that.
Oh,
I was
nice.
just gonna say,
nice.
Sweetness. Thank you. Shit. We got shit to do, y'all. It's time to get the ball rolling.
Yes, yes. And sometime after the first of the year, I had a conversation with Luke. Excuse me. And I'm gonna go ahead and I'm just gonna finish up my book, and because I've been trying to edit as I go, so I'm just gonna finish the book up, and then I'll go over the editing and all that, and I'm probably gonna send a copy to Luke and the both of you, and get some feedback and do some fixing up on it before I submit it. And then somewhere along the line, I would like to get like about 3 to 4 chapters that Cornelia and I read on Spaces.
Hell yeah.
It's going to be so much fun. I'm excited.
Yes, yes. All right. TPAW, great fucking show, man. We covered a lot of things there in relation to gender and gender norms and gender identity. And even though we had a troll that came in, we're going to get that. We're going to get that.
Can't have a successful show without a troll.
Hey, listen. I want to say cheers to that fucking troll. I appreciate you because it gave me the opportunity to say what I needed to say.
All right. Well, everyone, remember, be kind, be happy, and may good things come your way. Thank you.
Same bad time, same bad channel. Have a week.